We are recording now. Okay. So, welcome everybody. We are a bunch of therapists who are getting really, really interested in this technology that's happening at the moment and trying to work it out. So, bear with us. Now, what's going to be happening is we're going to be answering a multitude of questions, mainly between ourselves, some of them about ailments and some of them about some of the things that are going to be happening with people who may be thinking about going into the business of therapy when this is all over and done with. And actually, some of us who are dealing with the trials and tribulations of adapting and doing therapy online. So without further ado, we're going to start with Susan because she's raring to go. She's going to tell us who she is and what she does. Susan.
Okay. Hi, I'm Susan and I live in Essex. I run Crystal Soul, and it's a mobile therapist in which we do reflex, Indian head and full body massage, and we go to people's houses and we give treatments. Also, I work for a charity for Havens, so I've been blessed that I can also work with terminal ill, and I volunteer to do that each month, although obviously with the lockdown that hasn't been something I've been able to do for the last few months. I've been practicing for over 20 years. I'm iTech study background, and it's something I want to do full time.
Trudi, thank you, Susan. Okay, Trudi, do you want to have a go?
Yep. Hi everybody, I'm Trudi. I'm based in Wiltshire. I'm a Reiki master and teacher and holistic practitioner. So I can offer, obviously teach Reiki and offer it as a treatment. I also offer Reiki drumming, which is a lovely alternative, power of the drum. I also do hand reflexology, ear candles and chakra balancing and a thing called gamma mindset.
Great. Right then, Sue Winsbury. I kind of split up the Sues there. You see what I did? You got a Sue sandwich. So, on you go, Sue.
Hello everyone, lovely to be here. I'm Sue Winsbury, the Energy Queen. So I have a long background in holistic therapies. I'm a chronic fatigue and burnout recovery specialist, and I also coach and mentor healers, therapists in a spiritual business growth. So that's me in a nutshell. I've got 16, 17 years experience in therapies, well-being. I'm not going to go into my therapies because you know what we're like. We tend to accumulate qualifications like no one's business, but I've got quite a few of them and it's just great to be here.
Thank you, Sue. Vonnie, go for it.
I'm a practicing therapist. I'm a counsellor, but practice in a very psychodynamic way, but underpinned by person-centred. I've run a private practice in South Woodford since 2003. In 2018, diagnosed with cancer. It led me to create a membership, and that membership is a membership accreditation process to create a new dynamic across the face of, if you like, the UK and abroad in relation to mental health and accreditation. I'm not going to go into the dynamics of that. It's all on the website. It's extensive, but it all came out of, the second company came out of the cancer. So I don't want anybody to feel sorry for me in any way, shape or form, because what came out of it was absolutely incredible, including obviously being alive, which is the most important thing for me. So there you go. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Vonnie. Angela, unmute yourself and tell us all.
Hi, I'm Angela Daye and I'm a health kinesiology practitioner. So that's working with energy on a physical, mental, emotional, spiritual level to deal with goals, concerns and issues and whatever else is going on in people's lives. And I'm based in Hamilton in South Lanarkshire.
Cool. And just to complete the set, my name is Leslie Marsh and I am a shamanic practitioner and holistic therapist as well. I'm also a professional speaker, which you can believe or not by the amount of times I stutter and stammer when I'm doing these things. But as I say, when I'm speaking without words that I know already, sometimes we make mistakes. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with some questions. And we had a question from someone who wanted to know if there were any proven theories that would deal with ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease. So I think basically, shall we go with Vonnie first on that one?
Well, the one thing that I do understand, and having had colon cancer, I joined a colon cancer group, and I found that, and this group has thousands and thousands of people, mainly from America, but America and the UK predominantly. And what a lot of us realise, and obviously being a therapist, I observe, so I pick up on all these things that maybe somebody else might not do. And I noticed so many of the individuals that had colon cancer, they had either Crohn's, or they had colitis, or they had diverticulitis. And I had diverticulitis myself. So I actually do wonder whether or not the trauma that we can go through in one way, shape or form can create problems within our guts, because that's where a lot of things actually originate from, and whether or not that can develop into something later on. Now, that's not based on deep research, that is literally based on thousands of people in one particular group, where I cannot help it because these things get talked about. You know, the origins, the age of the individual, how they've survived, what conditions they've had before. It all comes up as a general level of topic between all of us. But that was a connection that I picked up really strongly. And based on the level of people in there, it feels very coincidental. And I don't really believe in this many coincidences, that a huge amount of individuals in that group all had either colitis, diverticulitis, Crohn's. They all had something like that. So I champion for people with any of those conditions to make a point of getting regular colonoscopies, because in essence, that's what saved my life, getting it caught early. So I'm personally convinced that there's absolutely a connection. But that's not based on research, that's simply based on a very minimalistic research in a group of thousands of people. So I'd love to hear what other people think about what I've just said, and what you all know about this topic, because you have attributes I don't have. So I'm curious myself as to what anybody thinks.
Okay, Sue Winsbury, what do you want to say about that? Can you unmute? Yeah.
Well, it all comes down to energy ultimately, and our bodies are so good at holding on to energy and holding on to trauma energetically, and I think we hold experiences trauma in different parts of our body, which create inflammation, disturbances, disruption in various parts. Interestingly, I've been doing a lot of work with my son, because he's got fatigue at the moment. Interesting that I'm a fatigue specialist, and he fits the very typical profile, but he's had a lot of gut intolerances for quite a long time, and having done my research, he had a very difficult birth, and you kind of look in all the birth issues that went on, and it obviously creates trauma in our subconscious, trauma in our energy. So for me, I would be looking back at early experiences to see what has created disruption, because any kind of gut issue, health issue, is a disturbance of the natural flora, and there will be an energetic and an emotional core, as well as the other things that come into play, such as food and all the rest of it. But I tend to go back to the energy every single time and see what's the emotional traumatic link. And trauma, by the way, doesn't have to be something major serious. Trauma can be anything that your subconscious interprets as a bit of a one of those moments.
Cool. Trudi? Oh, sorry, Vonnie, what did you want to say?
I was just going to say, on the base of that, Sue, what would you think about my father dying of cancer at the age of 51, and me being 18, almost 19, and actually me ending up with cancer at exactly the same age as he was? Do you think that fits in nicely with what you've just said?
Very likely, because there will be an element of shock in your emotional system, your energetic system. There may also be they may have sown a subconscious fear, like, oh, what if that happens to me at that age? And it kind of it's had 30 years to sort of keep bubbling away under the surface, and a lot of this is not, it's not conscious, but these things go deep, and So yes, I would always be intrigued to trace the energy back, and there's quite easy ways of actually finding out when things have kind of embedded themselves energetically.
There are some cases where there have been some papers written on an hereditary kind of genetic memory thing that has gone on, where the children who have seen their parent die at such and such an age actually get the idea that that's only because their parent died that way. That's as far as they'll go, and they've kind of talked themselves into it almost. But it's kind of synchronicitous to think, you know, that these things will happen. So it may well be, I don't know, I think I've read somewhere that there is a kind of genetic time clock whereby the genes actually switch on and say, okay, this is the time that this will happen, because that's what this person has primed me for. That's what this trauma, as Sue said, that's what that significant emotional event has brought into my being and into my way of thinking. So there's always that, because like the Buddhists say, thoughts become things, and our body is a mirror.
I think that's a key part that you were saying there as well, Leslie. You were talking about the genetics and when things are switching on and off. And it's our beliefs, I think, that help make that decision for them to switch on and off. It's not necessarily you were born this way and therefore your entire life is mapped out. It is our beliefs, and it is what's going on in our lives, and the trauma that we've embraced and held on to because it's ours. And actually what we need to do is release it and move forwards without that concept of this is going to kill me, this is going to affect me in the exact same way as it affected my dad, my granddad, and everybody else before that. So I think that's a really key thing. It's not the genetics you were born with, it's the genetics that you're believing is forming.
And it's the fractals of information that we get from people who we believe know better. You know, like your granny says, oh, we'll never make old bones. And you think, oh. And that energy, we kind of start wearing that energy like a coat. And you start really, you know, this is what I do, this is who I am, this is what will happen. But there are actually studies that have been going on for quite some time about genetic markers being switched off, and the fact that particularly when it comes to sociability and short-term memory and a lot of other of the body's functions are being outsourced to a piece of technology that we hold in our hands instead of in our brains, and in most of our body as well. So the geneticists are actually working on looking at the patterns in the last 2 or 3 generations to see how those markers have changed in our generations to come as well. So Trudi, you go.
I think what Sue was saying about the energy is really true, and I just feel that energetically we do pick up a lot of stuff, and we do have subconscious beliefs which we need to understand and also be able to change. So yeah, I think both everybody, what you've all said makes complete sense to me, and it's logical. And I think from experience of other people that I've known, you know, like when you were saying about dates being relevant, I had somebody I knew, her mum died when she was young, and that date, you know, stuck with her, and her mum's age stuck with her. And when she got to her mum's age, she had the exact same problem, but she survived it. So I do think there's a lot of logic and sense behind what you've all said.
Yeah, we do seem to have a sell-by date that we've got kind of socked in there somewhere.
Yeah.
And, sometimes we manage to go beyond that, so it's quite good to know that. I was actually reading the other day, as I do, I've got this book called TED Talks, and they mentioned a guy who was a monk in one of the Kathmandu temples, not Nepalese, but French, I think. His name was Mathieu Ricard, and he's been deemed the happiest man in the world. And he's gone on and spoken about this, and he's spoken about how he feels about things and how his life is so simple and how he's so happy. And they've actually done fMRI studies on his brain, and the left cortex of his brain, where the happiness center is and where we get our positive memories and thoughts from, is off the charts. It's not even just good. The results are off the charts. And the other side of his brain, the right hand, where the more negative side really starts to come in, is almost non-existent. And he puts that down to basically compassion and just being happy with the simple things and what you've got, and not worrying about what's going to happen, what's not happened, and making it into something, you know, and all these things that we actually sit in our stuff with and worry every day. And that's part of it as well. I think a lot of what we're talking about is fear-based.
Yeah.
So before I start hogging things, Susan, what about you? You need to unmute you, hang on.
Traumas, totally. Children sponge up traumas and we just carry it around with us. And then they sort of manifest and they just appear many years later. And they form in diseases, and that's when we all step in to try and help and support however we can. I definitely think things like the chakras, you know, solar plexus is blocked, and, you know, just to be able to clear energies, you know, to get the free flow through the body just helps and somehow can heal certain people. But I also think it's very much a mindset as well. And I think, you know, people can give such, you know, get such bad news, but then can accomplish so much, or they can get bad news and just stop. So I think also it depends much as well on a person and how they feel.
Yeah. Angela?
I think we've pretty much covered it. As far as the theory side of things are concerned, I must admit I don't get into the theory behind different diseases and different conditions. For me, it's like most people have said, it's about the energy, and it's about dealing with the stressors that your body's under. And if we deal with that stress, your body can start to heal itself. Whether it ever gets back to 100%, I don't know. I've not got to that stage with any of these big concepts and big diseases, but I'd love to see that happen.
Well, actually, I was talking to Angela about this the other day, and I do go into the nitty-gritty because I've got a background in research. So I went and I looked at some papers on colitis and ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease, and I discovered something really, really interesting. There's a paper going on, and I'll put it out for anybody who wants it. But basically, we can produce hydrogen peroxide in our intestines by so we make our own ulcers, and we can ulcerate the intestinal wall to the state where it becomes like lace and then becomes full-blown Crohn's disease, and we have to start taking things out, and that will probably induce cancerous disease as well. So that was the simple thing that I found out. It blew my mind when I read that, and I thought, is this like from the 60s or 70s or something that people are, you know, this is going on? No, this was a paper that was done in 2015 or thereabouts, if my memory serves. But yeah, that's something that when you think about it, and I'm definitely with this, having seen it with animals, having seen it with my husband, who every time he gets totally stressed goes straight to his gut, and he has IBS, and it's a case of any time now, 10, 9, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, boom, there he goes. And, you know, because you can just see it, it starts off with a facial tic, and then the jaws get tight, and then you understand the way he's kind of throwing things about that he's not happy. And then suddenly it just goes. And then we have a full-blown session going on. So that also happens. And interestingly, with cats, things go straight to their bladders. Stress goes to their bladders and they pee everywhere, or they get cystitis. So there's an actual link to the mental stresses and the things that are intangible, making tangible physical changes in our bodies. And it's not us thinking, da, 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 da. It's happening with animals too. They get stressed, they get diarrhea, they get cystitis. So there is a lot to it. So right, Vonnie, you had some questions at one point, didn't you? I didn't get them all written.
I did. I had them listed, so I'm just gonna. I think I listed about 7, and I do. I'm just getting them up on my phone because I had them up and it's shut down. I actually agree with all of you. because I know about the psychosomatic symptoms, and I can't deny my biggest thing with actually finding out that I was diagnosed with cancer, exactly the same thing. I pushed to get my colonoscopy because my dad died at that age. And if you'd have seen me, you would have thought that there was nothing wrong with me, because most of the time I didn't feel ill in any way, shape or form. So actually his death saved my life. And I thought it was a very powerful memory for me personally to be able to give him that accolade, because I was traumatized when I lost him, but actually his death ended up saving me. So I'm very appreciative in a weird way, which sounds completely contradictory to a massive loss, but I'm very appreciative of somebody going through that to educate and push me at exactly the same age to make sure I saved my life. So that's kind of how I see it. But I'm looking for these questions, so bear with me, because I did have them all up.
Basically what you're saying there is like, it's like you learned the lesson from your father. Your father gifted you the lesson of what to look for, what could happen, what was going to be there potentially. And that's something that all the way through my job as a veteran, as soon as you mentioned the word mass, tumour, lump, everybody went, cancer. And as soon as they said that word, it was, oh, we better phone and make sure that we can get this done at the cremation centre and this done here and this done there. And you're like, no, cancer is an umbrella term. And most cancers, most of them, we can actually survive. So let's not put ourselves in the box just yet. You know, we've got plenty of other coats and jackets to wear before we get the wooden one. So, you know, there's loads of stuff that we can be doing. We're getting this life, and we're walking around in this suit that we have that actually is a suit of energy and atoms that's made up of everything that we've got, that's all around us. And it's how we treat it and how we look at it and how we actually perceive it that means that whether we walk in it comfortably or not so.
And I must admit, that's where I got to. I know that the power of the mind got me through what I had to go through in the most profound way. I don't have the vocabulary to describe to you all how I used my self-awareness to get through what I had to get through. And most people around me really actually, they struggled through this 100% more than I did, because I was constantly going, I've got my self-awareness, thank God I can accept a lack of control. I've got my self-awareness, thank God I don't have to be anxious about this is okay. And I went through it with a smile. But to say that out loud sounds so contradictory, because everybody automatically thinks you're going to die.
Yeah.
Whereas I had the capacity to go, you know what, whatever's going to be is going to be. I will deal with this. And I'm saying it with a smile now, because that's what I was doing in 2018, going through it in exactly the same way that I'm expressing to you. Well, and I think it was that power of mindset.
Yeah, we spoke about this when we
did, didn't we?
First, and it was something that Andrew and I made a decision when I was diagnosed, and I immediately said, we don't tell anybody about this that cannot handle it. And that anybody who is going to put me in an undertaker's, as soon as the word is out of my mouth, then they don't get to know, because I don't want to be bothered with their guilt trip. I've got enough to deal with. So that was a conscious decision that was made. And we really didn't. We picked and chose who knew, and we asked them to keep it to themselves. And we only told people who we absolutely had to. I didn't tell one of my sisters, because she was going to be coming down to the house and she would be wondering why we were selling it. But I didn't tell the other one, because she would immediately make it all about her.
Yeah.
So that also, other people's energies also comes into it. I mean, as far as dealing with it holistically, Trudi, particularly with the Reiki situation as well, and energetically, that's going to be something that we can almost do for ourselves as like a cleanse of other people's energies. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, you have to. I mean, you have to protect yourself from other people's energies, but also make sure that they're, cleansed and don't pass it on to other people.
Yeah.
I know quite a lot from the people that I've trained with Reiki. One person came back to me and said that she kept picking up a lot of stuff when she was massaging, So she was massaging a person, but the Reiki was obviously kicking in, and she was then picking up their bad stuff and not protecting herself, and then she was absorbing it. They were going off doing fine, and she was going, oh. So yeah, it's really relevant to protect your own energies and those around you.
Yeah, Sue, I suppose you, Sue Winsbury, you would find that as well. People, particularly with chronic issues, would be finding more or less a case of they're picking up a lot of stuff that they don't really need to be taking with them because they don't realise they've actually picked it up.
Yeah, I think there has to, certainly as therapists, there has to be a huge awareness of your own energy. That said, I take a quite unusual view in that if your aura is strong and complete, it hasn't got any holes and gaps and leaks and all the kinds of things in it. If you've got a really strong aura, there is no need to protect your energy because that's kind of compressing it. Whereas if you expand your energy field out, other things kind of deflect off. So however we do it, but my preference is I expand my energy. So before I do any work, I just focus on expanding it so that it protects me just through its own expanse, rather than when I first started, we used to kind of wrap ourselves in imaginary cloaks and all the rest of it, but actually you're contracting everything in, whereas I think the expansive, and I know not everyone will agree with that, but that's how I like to work it. But I do, I also used to do hands-on work in an old people's home, and oh my goodness, I'd come out of there after an hour and I'm like, oh. So yeah, some people can be very draining.
Yeah.
But
Oh, has it gone silent?
Hang on.
I think you muted yourself.
Did I?
No, Sue did. Just as she was finishing that sentence, it went on mute.
Okay. But yeah, Susan Humphreys, what about you?
When with therapies, I always think of white light, and you do have to somehow, although you're giving your energy, you have to make sure that they don't zap all of your energy, because otherwise you end up taking some of their energy back. So it's learning how to somehow put that barrier up as you're healing, because obviously you want to give each person the right healing, but also you need to look after and protect yourself as well, because otherwise if you start taking that bad energy, you end up forwarding that onto other people as well.
Yeah. Vonnie.
So you just, yeah.
Yeah, so one of my questions, because obviously you're all from, other than Leslie and Susan, I'm trying to hold on to all the information you gave at the beginning, so forgive me if I get something wrong. But when it comes to therapists, we have a supervisor, and that supervisor is not the supervisor as in Sainsbury's supervisor. There's somebody that we offload our stuff to. They're there to make sure that we are doing what we're supposed to be doing with clients, but they're also there, depending on the experience of the individual, there to educate, nurture and support. Those are my three guidelines with supervision. But I'm kind of wondering who else has a supervisor, and forgive my dog, as soon as she sees me on a Zoom meeting, she waits for 20 minutes and wants to get involved, so I apologise. Sooner or later somebody will come and get her. But I wondered if anybody else has supervisors in your roles. I know, Leslie, you will, won't you?
Yeah.
But I wonder who else has that, and the importance of that ability to be able to offload to somebody else but keep things 100% confidential.
I don't have a supervisor, but I work with another girl, and we share our experiences. So we'll sit down and we'll talk about clients, and we can sit there and we'll sort of look at somebody's treatments, for instance, and work out a course. So we do sit with each other and talk weekly, but it's very much we're two friends that we work together. And we feel that's really good because we support each other, plus the clients that are local here as well. And yeah, it seems to work really well by just talking.
Sue?
I think that it's so important. And when I was doing lots of hands-on work, a bit like you, Susan, I had colleagues that we would meet on a regular basis, and not disclosing any client details, but we discuss information. And certainly in my chronic fatigue recovery arena, we have supervision sessions every 6 weeks where we have a qualified supervisor, and we just go and take any client issues, and also if there's any techniques that we're interested in that we're not quite sure about, then we can share and ask for support from others. So I think supervision is really important.
Trudi.
I don't have a supervisor. I've obviously got my Reiki masters that taught me that I can go and speak to if I want to in confidence and be confidential. So there is the system there if I want to. But as such, I tend to discuss things with my higher self, shall we say. So yeah, there are people I can speak to if I feel I need to, but do it a different way. So, yeah.
Angela?
So I've got a mentor that I work with on a monthly basis, and I've got her on WhatsApp whenever I've got any questions, and she's very good at keeping me on track with all the extra learning that I've got to do as well, which is excellent. What we also have as a group of health kinesiologists is we've got a private Facebook group where the only people that are on that group are fellow people who have completed the training, or at least partway through the training for health kinesiology. And that's got all of our tutors in there. We've got all the other mentors in there. So some questions may come up and say, well, has anyone dealt with this kind of case? Has anyone dealt with this kind of symptom? And what are your experiences? And it's been a really, really supportive group from that perspective. And we get to know each other really well as well. And that's a global group. So we're seeing things across the globe, and we're constantly developing and constantly moving forwards. I'm also a member of the Kinesiology Federation, and we've got a lot of support coming through there as well, especially during lockdown. There's been lots of Zoom chats, there's been meetings and everything else where we can just dial in and have a chat and get balanced, which has been really useful.
So we got another one, Vonnie?
Oh, back to my question. No, I being in the therapy world, I see it not being as valued as what I know it can be. It's almost like when I trained way back in 2003, it was an absolute gold dust in my practice, if you like. I had to have that to be able to, one, work ethically, but also the support business wise, as well as emotionally, as well as educationally, was absolutely imperative. And in the therapy world, and Leslie, I'm sure you're going to either agree or disagree, but I have a feeling you'll agree, that the lack of importance to it is becoming almost more like a tick box exercise. Well, I've got my supervisor because it's a mandatory expectation of what we're supposed to do, but there doesn't seem to be the value placed on that relationship and what you can get from that relationship. And for me personally, I advocate for it very, very strongly, because I know I wouldn't be sitting here right now talking to all of you if it wasn't for an amazing supervisor who educated me around all the things that you didn't get educated in during your studying. And it's quite hard for me as an experienced therapist when I see psychotherapeutic therapists, person-centered therapists, people working directly with other people with their feelings and emotions, where they don't actually have that value. And I really want to highlight the importance of that, because it's almost essential to your own well-being. I think, Susan, when you said earlier about moving away and letting things go, that's part of having the supervisor there, because you're offloading and letting it go, which means that you're more prepared and more willing and able emotionally to work with the next individual and what's come up. So I don't know, Leslie, I'm sure you'll agree with me because I know you well enough, but please come in here and give me your thoughts and feelings.
Yeah, I think that basically there has to be someone who is, if not more experienced than you, that has a different experience to you in the same sector, who understands where you're coming from when you say, yeah, I'm stumped. I don't know what to do with this. So I need a sounding board to be able to say this and be honest with you and say, I am honest enough to say, I don't know at this moment what to do about this. because I've never experienced this particular thing before. Now, obviously, when you have a lot of experience, then you can kind of map over and condense certain things that have happened with other people, other clients who have come in, and you've maybe seen that particular situation, but in a different guise before, you know, different wrapping, same stuff. But at the same time, every personality is different. Everybody is coming from their own different experiences. So I have my elders, they're my supervisors, and every so often we check in. We have graduate circles at 4 times a year that we can go to, any of them or all of them. But we try and go at least once a year and to the conferences, just to check in to see what everybody's doing, what the new people are bringing in, as well, the younger people who are coming in and doing things a little differently, because they're probably more up on this technology than we are and how to use it that way. So yeah, I think that being supervised is not this kind of taking a chart and looking at it going, well, have you done this? Have you done that? Have you done the other? It's more a discussion and an understanding of, yep, you are an expert in your field, but your field gets larger every day. It doesn't get smaller. It actually gets larger. And the more problems and the more situations that come in, the more people are looking for different modalities to help them, which is why I decided to do this, so that people could see that there are other things that people will be able to help them with, and that maybe will fit their personality.
Yeah.
Differently. Not better, not worse, just differently. And so that they have a choice, they see that they have a choice, and they also can see that we are not all at odds with one another. We're actually cooperating with each other and collaborating because we're there for well-being. We're not there for ourselves. If we were, we'd be sitting in a mountain of money somewhere in the south of France, not doing anything at all at the moment, looking at our pool getting dry. But there you go. So it actually runs into...
I think I prefer our terminology of mentor better than supervisor. It doesn't feel quite as authoritarian, I suppose.
Yeah, I think when you say supervisor, it also reminds me of a headmistress or a headmaster. You know, sort of, you know, that kind of stiff-backed, kind of looking down at you kind of thing. Oh, right, okay. But yeah, definitely, we need somebody to be able to understand that we can offload things to, and can actually check our work and make sure that we're not suffering, that we're not actually missing things because we are tired or we've picked up some of energy that we shouldn't have, and be able to go there and get cleansed ourselves.
Yeah.
To an extent.
Can I ask a question on the back of that then? So
Yeah.
we've all mentioned whether we've got supervisors or not, or mentors, or whatever the concept is. How often do you guys get someone else to work on you in the therapies that you practice, if at all?
As often as I possibly can.
In what way do you mean that? Let me just try and understand.
So for me, as a health kinesiology practitioner, I'm now working with someone at least once a month just now. And we're doing swaps in the fact that I give her a kinesiology session and she gives me one back. So I'm still getting the therapy done on myself to make sure that I'm still balanced and everything's still good with me. So I was just curious to see whether or not that was something that anybody else from different backgrounds and different therapies is doing as well.
If I wasn't capable of going to see a therapist when I hit a problem in my own life, I wouldn't sit in front of a client being a therapist, you know, because it's a space. And that space for me as a therapist is one of the most precious spaces we can have, because it's the one time you don't have to take responsibility. And obviously I'm in a place of quite strong self-awareness, so I don't take responsibility for my therapist's feelings, whereas I know that there are clients that do, and you have to help them work through that. But in relation to me, I love going to therapy because there's nothing like being able to sit in front of somebody and blurt out everything else that you're thinking and feeling. But I also went to a Reiki therapist once, and I had the most bizarrest, craziest experience, and I have no understanding of Reiki, no understanding of why, how, or what. but that was one of the most profound experiences that I've ever had. And to this day, I don't have a clue how somebody that does Reiki can create what she created with what was happening to me in the session that she did for me. And I'd love for somebody to explain to me, because I haven't got a clue.
Trudi, meet Vonnie.
Everybody's energy is different, and everybody's experience of Reiki will be different, and you won't have two the same. So some people will see colours, shapes, movements, visions. Some people will feel absolutely nothing. Some people might feel like they're floating away somewhere. There is so many different feelings and energetic things that will be going on that you may experience that would go on. But the only thing I would say is that whatever you experience should be discussed at the end, and you should be given some kind of explanation or not closure, but understanding of what you went through. It should be discussed so that you feel confident about what happened and why it happened.
She was training, so I didn't get that bit, but I got 1,000,000 dominoes, crystal dominoes falling down. It was like being touched without being touched, and it was like magic. I can't put it another way. It was literally the bizarrest thing I've ever experienced, because it literally felt like I had 1,000,000 dominoes cascading down me. And I'll never forget looking out of her garden at the end of it and thinking, oh my God, the vibrancy of the colours. It was like a completely different garden, but I couldn't work out. And she didn't actually explain to me, Trudi, what had happened or how. I just left there thinking, that was crazy. How the hell did that happen? What was all that about? So I've always wanted to ask somebody that knows that this is what you do, because it's not what I do, and I don't understand it. And I left there just feeling crazy almost, but not in a bad crazy way, just so confused, but so fascinated. But still to this day, and that was over 15 years ago, still don't have a clue about what any of it meant or what it was supposed to do. So
the colours can often relate to your chakras, so it depends what's going on in your life at the time. But the colours can relate to your chakras, and if you get a particular sensation and a vision, it can be relevant to something else. So you need to piece it all together and see at the time if you were going through turbulence or something tumbling or pulling away. There could be so many different explanations, and generally I will discuss it at the time, because obviously it's relevant to that time period, very relevant to what you were going through at the time. So the colours could be chakras, but they could be something else, but they're generally chakras in my opinion. The domino, did you see any numbers? Did you see the dots? Did you see any numbers?
no, just crystals. It was literally like a cascade of crystal dominoes flipping over. It was just weird. It's hard to actually verbalize what it was or what it, but that's the best description I could give you of trillions.
Was it coming from above going down?
Yeah, literally cascading. Yeah. And it was to help me.
To me, I would say that was like a cleansing experience. So you were having some kind of cleansing experience going on, because it was coming up from above and it was going down. So it was cleansing you of what was going on. And if you knew what type of crystals it were, then you could probably link that to something as well.
Okay, all right. As it happened, it was a tumour, which wasn't cancerous, and she was helping me not have a diagnosis of cancer at the time. So, but interesting what you say about the cleansing, because it is fascinating for me. And it's great to hear that from somebody that knows something about an area that I don't have a clue about. So thank you very much for that, Trudi. Really appreciate that.
Okay, I've got time just because everybody's on a time scale. So I'm going to say, Susan Humphreys, you had a couple of questions that were not ailment related, but were actually related with the actual business of doing this. Now, I think that one of the best ones was the first one, which was are
The
certificates online any good for opening up your own business?
Yeah. My thoughts on especially now with the lockdown, everyone's just logging on and will spend 5-10 hours and you can be a certified yoga teacher or a certified reflexologist. How dangerous is this for the business?
Oh,
Dropped out.
I'm going to let somebody else go first here.
Bonnie's going to have to calm down before we start that one.
I really know what this is like in the therapy world.
Yeah.
I can understand doing an online course for your marketing or for setting the business up and all that kind of stuff. But doing an online typing through course to get a qualification like that sounds quite scary.
Oh, it's a new Groupon, Wowcher, any of those. And you know, if you just type and say reflexology course, you can get a certified course for about £10 to £12.
What?
Wow.
Oh my good grief.
And that's the danger, that our business, if you like, is so saturated, or is getting so saturated with people out there that haven't, I feel, been trained properly, are just looking at a few books and then they're out doing what they do, and it's so dangerous.
And I think the problem with that as well is that the average person on the street doesn't understand what we all go through to get to be accredited and to get to be a professional therapist in our own fields. That if you just see somebody, I'm aware that with hypnotherapy you don't need any training whatsoever to set yourself up as a hypnotherapist, which was quite alarming when I found that one out. So I think for me, I know now that if I want to go to a hypnotherapist, I want one that is done through the British Institute of Hypnotherapy. But that's because I'm aware of that, whereas I wasn't aware of that until about 3 months ago.
Yeah.
So it's quite alarming, isn't it?
No, it's really frightening in the therapy world. You know, I saw a voucher advert, £12 to be a qualified practicing therapist. And so my second company, the accreditation membership, we advertise absolutely everywhere what it takes to be a qualified therapist, the absolute baseline, because it is terrifying as a therapist, because we haven't got a governing body. Our system doesn't want a governing body. I'm not going to go into the politics right now. Me and Leslie know about those, so I'm going to leave it well alone. But the truth of the matter is, it is absolutely terrifying to think that anybody can set themselves up as a qualified counsellor, a qualified psychotherapist, but they've paid a £12 voucher course and they've had no therapy, they've got no supervision in place, there's nothing ethical about them. So every time I see a voucher course, I am going onto that thread and I am labeling the entire criteria of a professional qualified therapist, so that everybody else on that thread can see exactly what it takes to actually be qualified. Because the responsibility of being a therapist, we're all therapists in our own right, the responsibility of dealing with another human being's mind and body is absolutely
absolutely.
It devalues everything that we do. It devalues it just dilutes everything that we do.
But it's also really dangerous.
It's dangerous, the practicing. Yeah, absolutely.
But at the same time, because we're not valued anyway, per se, particularly the complementary and holistic therapies are not valued as necessities, instead of just something that you do because you want to have just a wee time for an hour or so, just doing nothing and contemplating your navel. You know, because we're not valued as people who can actually make changes for people's well-being, then that leaves it open to all the shysters out there.
Yeah.
And you find those are the ones that charge more as well.
Yeah. Funny, we were talking about that this morning, about how coaches particularly are making things like 12 grand a year, when most of the big ones are making millions, like 12 million a year. or something stupid like that. But that's, you know, and one of the things that came up was because they undervalue themselves.
Yeah.
And that's because they start the how low can I go to get a client?
Or
Yeah,
they're doing that, I just want to help people and I can't help people that have got no money if I charge prices that are going to help me pay my mortgage.
Yeah, and then you become homeless. How are you going to help anybody doing that?
I mentor trainee wellbeing coaches as part of the chronic fatigue training. And I've always been a real stickler for quality courses, accreditation, and you know, in the coaching industry, again, it's completely unregulated, and there are so many people setting themselves up as coaches just because they like helping people. I'm really good at solving other people's problems, so I'm going to be a coach. Well, that's not what coaching is. And again, we're working with people's emotions, we're working with their health, whatever area people want to focus on. And I think a lot of them know they're not making any money because they haven't got the whole wherewithal about what coaching is, but also it's fundamental that we bring in higher standards right across the board of all therapies, and that they are implemented and for everyone's safety.
Yeah,
I think a lot of these certificates, particularly at the moment, are coming around because of the amount of redundancies and things that are happening with people on furlough. Because companies are actually just pushing people out the door because they can't afford to keep them on furlough until October. So there's an economical thing behind it, but also there's this lie that anybody who puts their money down can be what they think they want to be, because what comes with it is so much more than what you will learn on a piece of paper or on a screen. We all know the case studies that we've had to do, the work that we've had to do, the physical work that we've had to do, the actual going with people, understanding what they're going through, standing in front of somebody who's going through something where they feel they've been possessed by something and they're scared, they're angry, they're upset, and you have to try and get them calmed down and explain to them. You can't get that for 12 quid off a voucher.
No.
You know? No. And you also can't get the idea when you turn around and say to them, I'm sorry, I can't help you, but I know someone who can and I will refer you there. Because someone who's just paid, you know, buttons for a course is not going to have the integrity to turn around and say, I can't do this. Because it's going to be a fear-based situation. So we really need, and I'm so glad that you're doing your accreditation thing, because
sorry.
For us also to have a choice as to which accreditation that we go for, that will allow us a little bit more breathing space and allow a larger community, a wider community under that umbrella. So I'm going to stop now because it's 8:05, and I think we need to cut it now. Thank you everybody for coming. I hope we can do it again, and I wouldn't mind to have a panel where eventually we get people actually live phoning in questions even. Who knows?
That'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
That would be amazing.
Scary, but good.
That'd be really good. So thanks again, and I will see you soon.